Come again to the last session. We're treating the mineral revolution and its consequences in Southern Africa during the 19th century. You will recall that we noted that the second half of the 19th century witnessed a momentous event that occupies a major milestone in Southern African history. And this was the mining revolution, which was triggered off by the discovery of gold and diamond in sizable commercial quantities in several parts of Southern Africa. We noted that diamond discovered mainly in Orange Free State and the Greenland area, and the abundant gold found in with water sand were, to significantly alter the socio-economic and political structure of Southern Africa in the 19th century. So we'll look at the discovery of this mineral and how it contributes to the socio-economic development and also to racial issues in Southern Africa in the 19th century. By 1865, gold had been discovered in Southern Africa, as we've noted, and by 1870s, gold had been found in a commercial quantity, in major areas in the region. All right. So of the two major mineral resources found, that is gold and diamond, gold appears to have been of more importance as it produced about 70% of the total mineral deposit in Southern Africa by the 1890s. So it was so significant that it would alter the economic structure in Southern Africa. So Southern Africa does produce the largest proportion of world's gold supply as from 1894, which we've mentioned. We also noted that between 1870 and 1890, significant quantity of diamond amounting to about 150 million pounds was also produced in the region. So you could at this point want to visualize how revolutionary the discovery of these minerals was to the Southern African society. But for a proper comprehension of the revolutionary impact of the mineral discovery, it will be necessary for us to examine the impact of the revolution vis-a-vis the situation, what the situation was like before the discovery. All right. No, the impact of the mineral revolution first. No, it must be borne out in mind that Southern Africa before the discovery, basically practiced an agrarian economy. All right. It is very significant for us to come to terms with the fact that the Southern African environment was practically or predominantly agrarian in structure before the discovery of mineral, which revolutionized the polity. The inhabitants were engaged, before the 19th century in the production of wheat, of wine, of wool, ivory, hides, and skin, while they also produced and also traded in coffee, in sugar, in cotton, and cattle, without mentioning other staple food crops. All right, so the turnaround from an agricultural-oriented economy to a highly technological, capital-intensive, and industrial-based one represented a major change in the history of Southern Africa. As we've mentioned, we noted that due to the nature of mining as a result of capital-intensive business, a new era of capital formation began in Southern Africa. There was a drastic economic development in Southern Africa as a result of these mineral or extractive activities, all right, in Southern Africa. We also noted that between 1870 and 1936, over 523 million pounds in foreign exchange capital came into Southern Africa as a result of this mining. So several multinational firms, companies, experts also came, investors came to Southern Africa, bringing their money, their resources from Europe and America to exploit these precious minerals. So this came largely, particularly from Britain, Germany, France, and Switzerland. So it was the availability of this capital that revolutionized various aspects of Southern African economy, as you have mentioned. We noted that the mineral revolution and the injection of capital, the export of capital from Europe stimulated the formation of joint stock companies All right, such that in 1881, not less than 59 companies were floated within 6 months to exploit diamond mines in, in southern Africa. Also, the capital inflow also resulted in the development of banking facilities, which in turn helped capital formation and economic development. So as people brought in their money, foreign direct investment came. As foreign direct investment came, banks and corporations were established, which led to which boosted the livelihoods of both the Europeans and considerably Africans, as we are going to demonstrate briefly. For instance, in 1887, we noted that some mining industries were rationalized and put on a solid financial foundation by merging them into one company called the Drapers Consolidated. So there was a conglomeration was introduced by the Boers in Southern Africa in a way to galvanize, to pool the resources of these investors together. These mineral discoveries also facilitated the growth of urban centers with substantial white population in Southern Africa. We have mentioned all of this, and it was as a result of these mineral resources, particularly, that the foundation of urbanization, of economic growth, that Southern Africa recorded in the 19th and 20th century was laid. So, for instance, in terms of urbanization, we noted that the population of Johannesburg, Kimberley, Rand, for instance, rose tremendously because of the influx of immigrants who sought to benefit from the new opportunities available in these centers. So these included people from Britain, from England, from Switzerland, from France, Germany, and other places. So implicit in the above is the immigration of fortune seekers from Europe, which we've mentioned, from America, from China, and India, and also the emergence of the Utilanders, who we have considered in our previous topic. Or all of these groups complicated, even though they contributed to the economic or to the capital formation, but they complicated the already race relation crisis in Southern Africa, by further diversifying the heterogeneity of the society, and also this actually brought tension, of course, especially upon the indigenous people. So the growth in urban centers and availability of capital, in turn, stimulated the development of infrastructural facilities, as we've mentioned during our study. Communication facilities were also developed to aid the exploration and exploitation of the minerals. There were there was massive construction of roads, for instance, massive construction of railways, transport systems, were introduced in a way, that actually ease mobility. All right, roads and railway linking urban centers to the mining areas began to sprout rapidly, beginning from 1850s and 1860s, as mentioned. For instance, between 1860 and the end of the Second World War, in 1945, over 2,000 miles of railway lines, had been built, for you to see the remarkable impact of the mineral revolution in Southern Africa. It is only in other parts of of Africa, like in Congo, in Nigeria, that mineral revolution doesn't add up to the equation, doesn't contribute to capital formation or economic development, as we have seen in Nigeria. The phenomenon known as resource cost. By 1919, about 47,000 miles of first-class road had been constructed, and many more miles of secondary roads were also constructed across the region. Also, in addition to this, was business boom, which eroded the development of telegraphic facilities. There was with the construction of roads and telecommunications came telegraphic facilities and regular means of transport to Europe, all right, which revolutionized the economy. Also, there was also improved transport facilities, which I just mentioned, that which contributed to the population explosion and gave rise to greater agricultural production. So the wealth generated from the mineral activities was also injected into other facets, other segments of the economy. For instance, we noted that from gold and diamond mines came the revenue with which research institutes were set up to battle the agricultural diseases, and food insecurity. So other consequences or repercussions, of the mineral revolution were in the area of race relations, which is very significant. The consequence of industrial development, while increasing the influx of different people from different backgrounds, from different countries, generally deepening the inter-economic dependence between the blacks, whites, colored, Chinese, and Indians, and other groups who probably inhabited the region. Apart from the Utilanders who came in their thousands, Africans around the mining areas also migrated to the mines, which we've noted. For instance, in 1886, there were only about 1,500 Africans working in the mines. By 1894, we noted that there were over 40,000, and by 1910, they had risen to about 183,000 Africans working in the mines. So, for the first time, or relatively, Africans temporarily enjoy some forms of inclusion in the economic development that occurred during the period. Africans went to the mines not only from within the Union of South Africa, but also from territories outside Southern Africa. For instance, from Mozambique, Malawi, and Rhodesia. And this led to the phenomenon of migratory African laborers, which brought about increased interdependence within South Africa and between our neighbors, all right, people from East Africa, if you like. So we noted that employment of African labor was not limited to the mines, but also extended to manufacturing industries. For the first time, Africans were allowed to work in the manufacturing industries, and by 1914, there were 47,000 Africans employed in manufacturing industries. For you to see the remarkable progress made, even though this will soon be upturned, by draconian policies put in place by the Europeans. African employed in manufacturing, as in mining, were almost confined, however, to the lower grades of employment, merely as unskilled labor. We noted explicitly that even though most of them were allowed to work in the factories, in the industries, but they worked as unskilled labor. So they were also employed in the agricultural sector, particularly, which was a major domain, reserved for Africans. By 1905, we noted that there were about 210,000 Africans working on the farms, employed as farm laborers, farm workers, sharecroppers, and caretakers, if you like. So in the urban areas also, Africans found employment as domestic servants to white people. So it is easy to see that Africans had their own share of the economic boom arising from the mineral revolution. So in the various parts of Southern Africa before 1910, Africans started again to own land, to at least so some sense of belonging came. All right. For instance, they occupied 13.5 million acres of land in the Cape Province during this period by 1910. In addition to about 40,000 Africans were living on special locations established by the government. So this level of inclusion was quite remarkable and phenomenal between the last 2 decades of the 19th century and the first decade of the 20th century. All right, so the government of Southern Africa also encouraged deliberate they also deliberately encourage a system of individual land ownership to encourage a more productive land use in the area, and this was so significant. There were therefore no restriction for Africans to purchase land outside their own areas, and it was still possible for Africans to lease land from Europeans. In Natal province, there were private locations, mission reserves, and crown lands. It was estimated particularly that Africans were living more on private lands than on locations and mission lands put together. So these are some of the issues we've highlighted, that contributed to rural and urban development in Southern Africa. Even in the Transvaal and Orange Free States, as we noted that Africans did not suffer from land shortage because no, they were given opportunities to own land, to work in factories. Most of them, to also go into agreements, share agreements with the Europeans, especially in the farm, in the plantations. In the Transvaal, Africans also occupied about 20 million acres of crown land, and half a million was privately owned by Africans. So this relative prosperity of Africans soon, of course, started to stare the whites, soon stare the whites in the face, as the whites suddenly realized that the Africans had begun to benefit enormously and tremendously from the booming economy. So in 1905, a South African Native Commission was appointed, and its report was an eye opener to the whites, with regards to the benefits and privileges enjoyed by the Africans. For instance, we noted that the report of 1905 struck fear in the minds of whites regarding the potential dangers that were inherent in the fact that African relative prosperity vis-a-vis their number, which was overwhelming that of the whites, was becoming a threat. Therefore, after 1910, series of legislations were promulgated to check the African population, their privileges and opportunities they enjoy. So among these legislations were the Mines and Work Act of 1911, which introduced color bar into the operation of the mines. So it means that Africans were restricted considerably from working in the mines, in the either in gold mining or diamond mining. All right. The act also excluded non-whites from all skilled work in the mines, and permanently restricted them to the unskilled level in the sector. So there was also the Native Land Act of 1913, which purpose was to prohibit any further acquisition of white land by Africans and limit the practice of allowing Africans to operate the farms. So you could see the kind of policies introduced against African on their own ancestral land. And so in essence, the act intended to lay down the principle of possessory or territorial segregation in Southern Africa. Secondary consideration was that the act was likely to lead to increase in the supply of African labor, by forcing Africans into the position of farm and mine laborers. So other provisions of the act, as it affected the Africans, included the fact that, except with the governor's consent, the Governor General's approval, no African may purchase land outside a scheduled area, either from a person other than an African. So it was not allowed for Africans to trade land or to purchase land from any other person other than his own kinsmen and all of that. So, however, it is important to note, as we've mentioned, that Africans still needed the approval of the governor, even in some cases when they were trading land between fellow Africans and between an African and another African. So the governor's consent was still needed. So lastly, we noted that Africans were not to lease land in these areas outside those reserved for them. So, and this actually was one of the major changes that occurred as a result of the mineral revolution in Southern Africa during the period. So the snag about this provision is that the scheduled areas reserved for Africans amounted in practice to only about 7.5% of the total land surface of South Africa. That means the white are taking over over 93% of all the land in South Africa, leaving about only 5% to the indigenous people, which is quite obnoxious. The immediate impact of the act varied from place to place. As we've mentioned in our class, the act, for instance, was not to apply to the Cape Province, but it had profound disturbing effects on Africans in the Two Boers Republic, as we've mentioned. And as a result of the act, Africans were only consigned to a negligible part of Southern African land. The long-term impact is that it heightened the dependence of Africans on the white economy. Even this is something that continues to shape the reality, the existential realities of the blacks in Southern Africa as we speak. So this meant that Africans and whites were brought closer together again. This resulted in greater interaction and tension and hostility between them. All right. No, I'll conclude rapidly now. We've noted that the Land Act also strengthened the system of migratory labor. So, because of the Land Act, several Africans migrated, from their original settlements to other areas, to secure better opportunities. Migratory labor affected the family life of the Africans, and there was also a shortage, of manpower for the development of the agriculture. Because of the migration, people had to abandon their farms and, in the pursuit of industrial jobs, petty, white collar jobs, even though as uh, low skilled or skilled labor. A political consequence is the sharpening of African political consciousness, which later became the rallying point for African nationalism in the 20th century, which I've mentioned. So, in conclusion, the mineral revolution affected Southern Africa in various ways, which we've mentioned. First is that it resulted in the convergence of various groups of people with different and often conflicting interests in Southern Africa. This not only resulted in rapid urbanization of some cities within the region, but it also complicated the already complex race relation crisis in Southern Africa. Attempt to solve this issue arising from the mineral revolution led to the promulgation of laws that further heightened the color problem, which has become an essential ingredient, of Southern African political life in Southern Africa. So, with this, I think I've completed about the outline. So, if you have any question, you can comment on the add your comment so that I will respond and shed more light. Thank you.